Well, we're bang on 10, so I'll make a start. That's my little timer telling us we're on 10. That's superb. Excellent. Well, welcome to another Thoughts Over Coffee, just 15 minutes of a bit of inspiration for your week. I actually was putting this together. I put this together on Sunday and was going through it this morning and suddenly had a burst of inspiration based on something I saw and thought, oh, I might just change and tweak it slightly. So it's been fun pulling it together as we've gone through. And just reminding people that tomorrow at 8 to 9, we've got our sales principles. We'll be running through some of the key principles for those of you in sales, and then we'll be looking at the advantage of speed on Thursday. So if you're able to join us, or if that's in your space, or you know somebody that could benefit, please do feel free to let them know, and more than happy for as many people want to join as possible. One of the things I want to look at today is picking up from where we were talking about last week. There's a lot of emotion around what people are going through at the moment, and people will have a roller coaster of emotions. Particularly today, there's a lot of people sort of waiting for 4 o'clock to see, are we going to come out of level 4 to level 3? Aren't we? What's it going to mean for me? And so really wanted to focus today on looking at understanding the emotions that people go through. A lot of people feel that there's good emotions and bad emotions. Which is something that is very sadly taught in our society. Like it's good when you're happy, but when you're sad, that's not a good thing. But the reality is that all emotions are merely messages to your brain. An emotion is what it is. It's not good and it's not bad. It's how you deal with it that makes a difference. And so it can be very useful to understand the emotions when we go through them. Now, this is particularly important for you and for your team when we're going through difficult times. People can sometimes crucialize what they hear. And then, of course, we project it forward. We go, oh, well, if we stay in level 4, that's going to mean my company is going to close, and then I'm not going to have a job. And if I don't have a job, then I'm not going to pay my rent. If I can't pay my rent, then, and we go and make it worse and worse and worse and worse. So it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And we can actually get ourselves to a state where we are frozen in fear. Now, we want to be able to avoid that as much as possible. The reality is, though, that our brain does go through stages when we hear bad news. So this is often the graph that's drawn to show the emotional state that people go through. You can see the passive and the active, should I say, the active and the passive, and how we move through those stages when we hear bad news, or when we're dealing with grief, or when we're dealing with something that upsets us incredibly. Oftentimes people will try to deny that they're feeling upset about something, but you will see this in them, which is why sometimes other people can say, oh, are you all right? And you're trying to think you're putting on a great face, but people can actually see it because you are dealing with it subconsciously, even if you're not dealing with it consciously. Now, these stages actually came up from a woman called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She originally proposed 5 stages of grief. She wrote a book in 1969 called On Death and Dying. This has been expanded, and so if you look up the stages of grief, quite often you'll find 7 stages. So 2 more were added in. So you can see those are the stages there. So shock and testing were added in. So people go through a state of shock. So for argument's sake today, let's say that there was a spike in the number of cases over the weekend, and they decide that they're going to put us in lockdown for another 2 weeks. A number of people will go into a state of shock. And then they'll go through these states over here of denial, anger, then there's bargaining, depression, testing, and then acceptance. And when we go through these, it's useful to know that it is okay and it is normal to go through this flood of emotions. I particularly liked and found very helpful, David Kessler wrote another book. He, with permission from Elizabeth, he actually wrote another stage to these stages of grief. He said that when he went through his own grief, when he read the book that had been written, what he found is that there was another stage. And so he called it the 6th stage, obviously as a follow-on from her 5. It's now called the 8th stage. And it's finding meaning. So when we've gone through something that's terribly difficult, terribly hard, or terribly bad, we can often look back and go, oh, I can see why I went through that. It's changed the way I think, the way I view things, the way I act, the way I behave. And so people can often find meaning in why they went through something really terrible. And while they don't wish to go through it again, they'll often say that they're glad that they did go through it because of what they learned. And that's when we find meaning. It's that next level to accepting what's happened to you. Now, how does this apply in our personal world, in our business world, as we start to look at it? One of the best books that I've ever read on the topic of accepting what's happening around you, while not denying it. So we went about accepting, we're going, it is what it is, so what will I do with what I've got, is a book called Extreme Ownership. So it's written by two former Navy SEALs, Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. And it's one of the best books I've ever read in terms of its application of what they learned in war situations and how they apply that to business. It's a very eye-opening book. If you're a reader, please read it. If you are an Audible person, I listen to the book on Audible. The two of them read it. They read a chapter at a time, and they read it very well with a lot of emotion. You can almost feel like you're in the spaces and places and tension points that they were in. And there is also a YouTube video link. But they outline such considerations as this: standing up and taking the blame for mistakes. Now, when you're in a point of leadership, when you own a company, it can be very hard at the moment to take ownership for the state that your business is in. You know, there's this virus that you can't even see that's going around the world, and it can be very easy to blame something that is outside of your control, which is obviously something I've been addressing a lot as we've gone through. We focus on what we can control. So they also talk about not blaming subordinates. And in this case, it's not blaming politicians or not blaming the virus, not blaming anything for what's happened. Okay, so watch how much we're blaming. Simplifying communications. I've talked about this a lot. Are we communicating on an ongoing basis with your team? I've said that in times like this, it's important to over-communicate rather than under-communicate. And always allowing subordinates to receive praise for positive outcomes. So we want to make sure that as much as we possibly can, we're encouraging people with what they're saying or what they're doing. And so what we want to be making absolutely sure of is that we're sharing the praise as much as we possibly could. Oh, am I missing my cup of coffee? So thank you for that. The idea of the coffee session was so that you could have your cup of coffee and hopefully get some inspiration and some ideas through it. And so inside of that as well, being decisive. So the book covers about how the importance of being decisive, how important it is to make decisions quickly during this time. So what I really want to focus on is how can we do this? How can we have plans but be flexible enough to adapt through this time? So like I said, the book is either in visual or audio, or you can watch it on TED Talk. So he did a TED Talk, a 30-minute TED Talk. And once again, he's a very good presenter as he goes through this. Now, what I was going to focus on is what I call oar and bed, above the line, below the line, which is a concept many of you will know. And we often talk about being a victor or a victim. And I wanted to really get across a bit of encouragement that in this time you could actually have a victor mindset, you know, that we can overcome this. We will overcome this. And I came across a couple of quotes which made me just alter. So tomorrow I'll look at the above the line, below the line in more depth. But I wanted to touch on these things over here. I really like this over here. It says, every test in our life makes us bitter or better. Every problem comes to break us or make us. The choice is ours, whether we become a victim or a victor. And the truth is that everybody has a victim and a victor mindset. And it's you who gets to decide which one is given charge at any time. If you remember last week, I talked about that lovely story about having the dog fight or the wolf fights. And the grandfather who always knew, but he always knew which wolf would win because it's whichever one you feed. So which one are you feeding in your own mind? The two little voices that are going on. And added to that, oftentimes, when we're surrounded by people who are negative or doomsayers, or you know, what information are we putting into ourselves, that can also affect which of those two little voices we feed. I love this quote by Warren Buffett. You will continue to suffer if you have an emotional reaction to everything that is said to you. True power is sitting back and observing things with logic. true power is restraint. If words control you, that means that everyone else can control you. Breathe and allow things to pass. And in terms of the news that we're dealing with at the moment, I thought that that was very appropriate for what we're dealing with now. And so I wanted to look at this victim or victor mindset. If you type it into Google, you'll come up with lots of things like this. You know, a victim mindset. You know, it got the has been, how you feel, what you become, what you need, as against a victor. You know, so they've had the same thing happen to them, but what will they do? You know, what can you control? How will they become, and what techniques and methods will they use to cope with that? And what I observed is that in going through this, I've been saying a lot during these coffee sessions that energy flows where focus goes. So wherever you focus, that's where your energy is going to go. And when you're focusing, is it all about you? You know, when we focus internally, it becomes all about us. I'm going to have to do this now. If they do that, I'm going to have to do this. I'm being picked on. I'm always the one who draws the short straw. It's all about me, me, me. And when we understand the fact that we have a choice, that we can control what we focus, we can look at an incident and go, well, it could mean that. It could mean that, or it could mean something else, or I could do something else with it. And the little thing that I found quite inspiring was this little picture over here where somebody had written victim and crossed out the im and put the or above it. And I looked at the im and I thought, you know, that im's about the I'm. It's all focused in on me, whereas it's or I could do this. When you're a victor, you're able to look at a situation and say, well, I could do this, or I could do that. We choose what we control. We choose what we can, we choose where we put our energy, should I say, and we should be putting our energy on what we can control. So we all have a choice. And my encouragement for you is, as we go into this week, whatever the news might be, choose well how you deal with it. Choose well how you communicate that with your team. And if anybody has got any questions, please do feel free to chuck them into the chat box. And more than happy to have a chat or a discussion through those. Nothing's popped up at the moment. That's great. Okay. As I said beforehand, we are running the two little sales courses this week. So if you do want to jump on tomorrow at 8, let us know, and we'll be able to have a look at that for you. Or we can. The name of the book, certainly the book is called Extreme Ownership. So the book's called Extreme Ownership. The sales course links are different. I will, if you could drop me an email, I'll send the links to you. So if you want to send me an email to Mike, M-I-K-E, @thinkrite.co.nz, I'll send that to you. For these two here, they're free, but you do need to register for them. We've got a limit of 100 people, and we've got a number of people signed up to them. There is still room if you wanted to jump on, so do let me know. Great, Chantal, I'll send that through to you, absolutely. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. I do trust that this has been useful. As always, we are looking to help as many businesses as we can through this time. Do let us know if we can help. As I've said many times, we've got information on our website. We do a lot of training with people, and our key areas are obviously around mindset, sales, and teams. And we have done some marketing work as well. So let us know if we can help you in any of those spaces. And we look forward to catching up with you tomorrow. Have an absolutely superb day. And, oh, we've got another question coming. Oh, good. Okay, just a thumbs up there. That's magic. Excellent. And a chat, sorry. Let me just quickly jump on that. Good, excellent. We'll send those links through. Absolutely. Many thanks, everybody. You have an absolutely superb day today. And we'll catch up with you again soon.